Hello, it's Friday. I've been in a lot of discussions this week. I'm worn out and weary. I'd like to have a fun Friday, a fun moment with us while we just have a minute here, conversational, and talk about some of the things that we did this week. Primarily lighthearted in a story. Some of the people I talk to love politics the way I do, see it as an important element in society. But I told my Herman Talmadge story, and they weren't moved. And I said, well, I'm going to tell it to you, even though you might not think it's something either. I guess it's because of the times in which I lived. Herman Talmadge was a big figure, the Talmadge family. And you didn't need Dancing with the Stars back in those days, because between Herman Talmadge and his dad, Eugene Talmadge, they did enough to keep us, the state of Georgia, entertained with politics. My Herman Talmadge story was when I was young. I was in the Democratic Party, and we'd had a meeting. I'm thinking it was in Rome, Georgia. I'm not sure. And we were at a hotel. And after the meeting, we thought we'd go for the meeting after the meeting, in the bar, which is really not something I didn't go to bars and drink cocktails with people as much. That's pretty young, but I tried to pretend like I could do that. I think we were wearing sport coats at least, if maybe even I was wearing a tie. I really just can't remember. And so pretty crowded in there, and the door opened, and here comes this guy. He's wearing a beige overcoat, and it looks worn. It kind of looks almost dirty and wrinkled. And he's got a cigar, he's in one hand, and a cocktail in the other, a whiskey, with ice. And, he looks a little worn himself. He looks like a character out of a paperback novel, But for some reason, I guess because, I don't know, my height, I used to look okay in a suit. I don't know what it was. He came over and we started talking. I was nervous about it. And so instead of saying something casual or social, I asked him a political question, and he didn't mind. He went ahead and answered, and we sat there and drank whiskey for a while. And, I just thought I guess it was my first senator from Washington that you saw on television and didn't see out and about that much. I guess I was just taken with it. And the fact that engaged him in a conversation, I thought that was always a fun moment for me. But it wasn't as popular with some of the people I was telling this week, and so I'll try it with y'all and see if y'all like it any better. But anyway, at some point, I'll tell you another story. I was in the Republican Party after a while. I started out in the Democratic Party, and I think I've mentioned I moved to the Republican Party over budgetary issues and all that, young and idealistic. And Herbert Walker Bush, the older one, the first George Bush, he was president, and he ran on a platform of just one thing: no new taxes. And, he broke that pledge, of course. And I thought that, well, how could you do that? How could you go to the American people and just say that one thing and then not do it? And I just didn't think that was good politics. Now that I'm older, I'm a little more flexible and understanding of how things, happen. I wouldn't have said it the way he said it to start with. When I thought that when I was young, and I still think that today. So I decided that I would back Pat Buchanan. He was an insurgent that decided to run against George Bush. Definitely an upsetting aspect for the established Republican Party because, we had a sitting president. But when Pat Buchanan came to Georgia for the Georgia primary, I helped him. I took him around and introduced him to crowds that would gather. And that's where I was telling you I planned a trip for him to Rome, Georgia, with the Secret Service. We sat down and planned it out. And I believe that was Pat Buchanan I brought to Riverbend Mall. And he gave a speech there. The whole world press was there. I was surprised. There must have been 100 people of the press coming there. And I was told that was the first time a presidential candidate had come to Rome in our lifetime. and in the memory of anybody that we could find that was at that moment. There have been several since then, including now, of course. Donald Trump has been to the Russell Field Airport at least twice. So, and that's because of Marjorie Taylor Greene and the impact. Her influence, I'm sure, helped him decide to come here. He thought he would be well received, and he was. But the funny part of that story is that when I was getting ready to introduce this guy Pat Buchanan, to the people that had gathered there, they have a little stage, and you get up and you say, a few things about the person. And I think it always ends with the next president of the United States, and then you say his name, and then he comes up, and I thought I'd be on the radio. They cut my part out. And what was so funny was that because it was in Rome, I brought my son. He was probably 8 or 10 years old. And while we were waiting, a member of the press asked my son something. And the one thing you got to know about my son is there was something funny about him, that he was almost literally born with a full adult vocabulary. I mean, it was amazing to be at a, kind of a cocktail party or something, and he would walk in and adults would try to say something to him and they would find out pretty much soon that he could maintain a conversation on their level. It was amusing to watch. But anyway, so the journalist asked him something. I believe they asked him, what were you doing here? And his reply was something along the lines, well, I want to see what Pat Buchanan is going to say about George Bush raising taxes. Okay. Well, I mean, no one coached him. That was just, that's him, And I don't know if it was that day or the next day. They had this fellow who did a weekly radio program, Paul Harvey. And so everybody always listened to Paul Harvey in our area, and I guess across the country. And so that's what led off the story. Paul Harvey goes, well, Pat Buchanan is in Rome, Georgia, and little Jonathan Davis asked, is George Bush going to raise your taxes? And so we couldn't believe it, so my son got his name on national TV. And so that was a good, funny moment. But I'll tell you that actually what's funny about that, and we don't have time to talk about Ross Perot right now. We'll keep this short. But I did work with Ross Perot, and Ross Perot asked me to bring my family down when he was going to be in Atlanta one time, and I did. And the press took a picture of my son. Now I'm telling a story, aren't I? Took a picture of my son hugging Ross Perot. They put that was either in the Atlanta Journal or somewhere, and so all these opportunities I could promote it myself, but my son got the spotlight instead of it. But anyway, so I'm going to get to a point in a minute. I also wanted to tell you about, oh, yes, here's the point on this Pat Buchanan thing. Okay, so I brought Pat Buchanan to Rome, Georgia. And I was in the Republican Party. The establishment Republican Party was for George Bush. And so the next time we had a meeting, and I would never give the name of people and talk about them without their permission, and I'm going to do this one thing. I hope that she doesn't mind. But Ann Regas, this lady named Ann Regas, was the head of the Republican Party, and I think she had been for a while, and I didn't know her. I didn't really know her, of course. Because she was, older than me and richer than me too. She was the head of it. And we may have had a party meeting at her house. I'm not sure where we had this party meeting, but we were there, and I had to go to it. I felt like, well, I'm a Republican. I'm, active in it, so they're having a Republican meeting. I'm going. And so I went in, I sat down, and it was okay, but I figured that everybody was going to give me a hard time because I had injured George Bush a little bit by bringing in an insurgent candidate. And Ann Regas got up and she said one or two things, and she said, by the way, she said, let's give a round of applause to Jim Davis sitting right over there, the young man sitting right over there. She said, by himself, he organized and carried out bringing a presidential candidate to Rome, Georgia, and brought the world press to Rome, Georgia. It was great publicity for us and good for the Republican Party. And I think we ought to give him a hand. And I was shocked. I thought she couldn't possibly mean that because she's like the biggest George Bush supporter in the world. But she seemed to a little bit, and so everybody did applaud. And after the meeting, there again, it seemed like I guess nothing gets done because we're drinking cocktails all the time. But there was a cocktail, those little desks that you have, and you open it up and it has cocktails in it. We were at one of those things, and I needed a drink, and I didn't even drink that much, and went over there, and she came over, and she was making one, and she stopped. She said, Jim, she said, I think you got something, and I think you could go a long way in politics. I mean, she didn't have to say that, but she did, and she was sincere. And I thought, well, is she a gracious person that's so gracious? But I think she just meant that, that there was room for diversity, and particularly in the Republican Party where you wouldn't expect that. And I was just impressed with her, and it really helped me think more highly of the party, because even though I was a Republican, I kind of thought they were, a little tight. They weren't as loose as certainly as I was as a young guy, out of college, a little bit of a free spirit. So I always remembered her all my life for those kind words. Turns out she was wrong. Later on, I ran for something. I ran for I think it was just like a county commission seat or something under the Republican banner, and lost. But, later on I realized I should have lost. Everybody in that town then was a Democrat. So, I mean, that was just the first of the problems. And so, but it hurt, and I didn't run again for a long time until now. Probably going to run for Congress. But the reason is that I know what I'm doing. I see an opportunity. There's an opening. It's a unique opening, and the window is pretty small. Things have to happen in a certain way, or it will not work. But I'm a pretty good chess player, and I see the opportunity, and I'm going to certainly take that if it would give me the opportunity to push the things that you read about in my books. Those are things I want to promote. And if I could be congressman, that would certainly help do that. Okay, let me go on real quick to try to get around to making a moral of the story. At some point later on, in Rome, Georgia, we're in Rome, Georgia, and I guess I'm maybe still in the Republican Party. This may have happened before that. I can't remember when it happened, but it probably still in the Republican Party. And we were having a more casual meeting, and we'd had it out somewhere. I don't even know if all the members were there. It would seem like a small group, maybe 10, 15 people. And after the meeting, we thought we'd go to Shoney's Big Boy. It's that restaurant. It was on Turner McCall Boulevard in Rome, Georgia. And we went there. And I'm telling you, this is exactly what happened. As soon as our hand touched the door to go in, there was the other crowd from the other political party, and I don't remember which one I was in. And we kind of laughed and looked at each other because there's only one, like little meeting room there that you can have a bunch of people go in and sit and have dinner together, and we would want to have that room, And we kind of laughed and looked, and I was not at the head of the line because I was still young. I was just a young kid, and these other people were much older and had a little more influence, so they were ahead, and they were doing the talking. And of course, we decided to have dinner together, and we had a great time. I don't suppose we talked politics that much. If we did, it would not have been a problem, and that was not even something that was noteworthy. It was something that was very, very, very comfortable, very, very normal for us to do. It felt like a normal thing to do because we knew that, we're working to try to make, we're working to make society better. This is not, it's not our highway. It's not an individual's highway. It's not a government building that we're building for ourselves or we're against building. It's a public decision, and we're just all trying to put forth what we see is the best way to do it. And we should appreciate the people on the other side. I do. I always have. And if we had that respect for each other, maybe we'd have a little bit less divisiveness because when I was working with Pat Buchanan, he was on the edge. Now, he was nowhere near as crass or as abrasive as some of the people in politics today, but he was pretty blunt. And as a matter of fact, it turned out to be a little bit too blunt for me. I think that's why I kind of stepped back from him a little bit. But that was the American first. We tried. Matter of fact, that you think these people who are newer into politics, you think that America first. Oh, let's try this. Pat Buchanan had a campaign. His slogan, his motto was America First. And his other motto was what? Make America First again. Does that sound similar? So we have been through this before, and frankly, it doesn't work as well as you might hope that it would. But at any rate, I wanted to finish by mentioning Cokie Roberts. She was on ABC News on Sunday morning for a long time. She was a columnist. Her dad was a famous Democrat. He was actually, I think he was Speaker of the House, or at least he was the majority leader. And he died in a plane crash. And his wife, Cokie's mother, took his place, and then she became a journalist. Well, after she kind of, almost to retire, she came to Berry College, and we were talking out there. It was just nothing. Anybody could go out there and listen to her. And we were talking, and we were talking about George Will. He's the conservative guy. And she was reminding me that people used to always get along in Washington, that they would go to these fancy cocktail parties. And it wasn't just the Democrats would go to one, the Republicans go to one. They went to the same one, And if I guess the people who were a little more closer to the top may have gone to the same party and, whatever, because Cokie would be, kind of toward the upper end of the social scale. But at least people used to get along with each other, and their families could see each other. They saw each other socially. And so that's the kind of world that, I came from. I believe that we need a little civility. If you think we need to battle, I believe history will show you that you'll get a little bit more working with people than you will just trying to battle people all the time. So let's leave it with that. The idea that we might all could try to get along and work with issues, come to some understanding that we all have some value, and that everybody needs to be heard. So I'd like for you to like and subscribe and share these things, because if you don't, it doesn't really do any good the way that Facebook has the algorithm for me. You have to share it for people to see it, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to be running for Congress, and there'll be more posts later on that discuss issues more. And then, things like this. I believe being civil is essential element of government. So thank you for watching this. Share it. I won't embarrass you with anything that I put up. And try to have a very good weekend if you watch this on Friday. But whenever you watch it, try to have good thoughts for yourself, and go the extra step and have good thoughts for people that are a little different than you, even people you don't like. It'll do you a lot of good. Thank you so much.